True story haunted on Route 66. The ghost hitchhiker of Stull, Kansas. Location: Stull Cemetery near Stull, Kansas, a lonely stretch between Lawrence and Topeka in Douglas County. I've spent the last year investigating one of America's most infamous and perhaps most terrifying legends. The ghost hitchhiker of Stull Cemetery, a place where the boundary between our world and something far darker seems to thin at night. They say Stull Cemetery sits caretakers forgotten, hidden behind a veil of overgrown grass and leaning headstones, not quite part of either Lawrence or Topeka, perched just off old Route 66. In hushed tones, late at night, locals speak of lights flickering among broken stones, of a hitchhiker seen on the roadside whose eyes reflect no soul, only black hollows, and who vanishes when the driver dares to slow down. Tales of lost time, cold fingers brushing sanity, and sudden comprehension that something ancient and malevolent is very, very real. This is not fiction. Though debunked in details, the satanic ritual rumors, the tunnel to hell, the ultimate portal. The core of the story remains stubborn. Countless witnesses, from drifters to couples passing through after midnight, have reported the same inexplicable phenomena. I've interviewed those witnesses. I've walked the cemetery at 3 a.m., with nothing but a weak beam from my flashlight to keep me company. I lived it so you could feel it. The road to Stull is quiet, deceptively innocuous. Route 66 in this stretch is narrow, flanked by fields that give way to overgrown grave markers. If you're driving east toward Topeka past midnight, the dark presses in from either side, and headlights illuminate a scattering of crumbling tombstones. No voices, no wind, just the hum of your tires over the asphalt and a hush that seems unnatural. It was 2:13 a.m. when I first pulled over. I'd driven from Lawrence, chasing down the legend for weeks. My car's headlights cut through the night, landing on an arching headstone half buried by weeds. The moon was a pale sliver, too thin to cast any real light. Silence wrapped around the place, so heavy I could swear the air itself was watching. Then a light appears, soft, flickering, as if a lamp were shaking hands in the grass. Orange. Wick. Far off but definitely there. At first I thought it was a passing car or someone's phone, but it hovered above the ground, gliding between stones. I grabbed my recorder. My heart thumped so loud I feared it would show up in the audio. The light drifted closer, refused to burn away. I rose and approached, and the light vanished. But on the ground I saw footprints. Damp, muddy human prints leading away through the grass as though someone had been walking, barefoot, down the ridge. That moment changed me. Way before I'd researched the folklore or cajoled stories out of reluctant locals, that light convinced me something unavoidable was here. The story begins with an old couple, friend of a friend, who, back in the 1970s, were driving home from visiting relatives. They rounded a bend just east of the cemetery on Route 66, and swore they saw a young woman, pale, thin, waterlogged clothes, hobbling along the roadside. She lifted her thumb, seeking a ride. Her eyes glowed. They stopped. She climbed in. They drove. After a few minutes she whispered a trembling "thank you," and then she vanished. The driver looked down. The seatbelt lay empty. No door had opened. No sound. Nothing but the dry whisper of tires on pavement. That's the essence. The hitchhiker isn't real, yet is. She's human-shaped, alive but spectral. I tracked that couple down in Douglas County. They no longer live there, but I found them. They still shake when they speak of that night, and one insisted, she didn't look dead, but she looked not wholly alive. From there the legend grew. Dozens more claimed similar encounters. Damp clothes like she'd come through a swamp. Eyes that caught headlights but didn't reflect, only stared. A seat beside the driver suddenly cold, open, and vacant when they dared glance down. Drivers report nausea, dizzy spells, sudden sense of panic. Many hear sobbing, soft, distant, but when they stop the car to investigate they see nothing. And then there's the cemetery itself. Stull Cemetery is small. Graves dating from the 1800s, a few scattered modern ones. But between two headstones sits a threshold folklore insists stands between our world and the world beneath. There's no visible portal, no symbol. But people report feelings of vertigo, of dread, a sudden urge to flee, as though the earth there is thinner, older, hungry. Some claim the whole place was once a stop on a wagon trail, the graves of early settlers, maybe even a forgotten pioneer who died tragically. That pioneer's body, they say, never rested. They built the cemetery there, but something about the graves, something that never properly crossed, keeps leaking into our world. I wandered the cemetery late one night with a tape recorder, my flashlight trembling. I played back what I recorded, nothing except a soft gasp and a whisper, "Why?" It played for a second before the wind, or something, cut it off. I stood there frozen. There was no wind, just night. A gasp in the dark. As I walked back to my car, my foot hit something moist. An old grave marker knocked to the side, lying face down in slippery mud. Beneath it lay a handprint. A human-shaped handprint in the clay. I don't claim to understand what's going on at Stull. I don't know if the hitchhiker is one restless spirit or many. I don't know if the lights are ghosts wandering tombstones, or if the stories psychologically transmute anxiety into phantoms. But the phenomenon is consistent, real, and terrifying. My breath came in ragged gasps as I backed the car away from the cemetery fence. Seconds later, I flicked the engine and headlights back on, though the black outline of Stull Cemetery was already swallowed by complete darkness. The hush felt alive watching me. I couldn't shake a feeling that something, a presence, had followed me to the gate. That night, I camped by the roadside, recorder running with a simple prompt. "If you're here, show yourself." I didn't expect a reply. I got one. A faint voice, like an echo drifting across decades. "Leave." The tape crackled with static, then the voice again. "Please, leave." That was it. No footsteps, no wind, no footsteps in the gravel. The next morning, the sun peeked over the cornfields, revealing the small cemetery's rusted chain-link gate. I counted 6 adult figures with camera crews. Locals, curious journalists, maybe ghost hunters. It was like a magnet. People drawn in by the same dark curiosity, seeking, always seeking. A week later, I met with Michael Harper, the most persistent legend chaser in my investigation. His theories were out there. Occult gateways, demonic pacts, maybe something pagan. He'd spent weekends camping in the cemetery for months. He tipped strong coffee into his thermos and stared through the back glass of his SUV at the drive-in theater sign down the road. "I've seen shapes move behind me," he said. "Heard footsteps. Whispered my name like someone standing next to me, but no one there." Michael has cuff tattoos. His story: drafted into the army at 18, lost his twin to suicide, came back searching. He chases ghosts like salvation. "I had a family come with me last month," he said. "A young couple in an SUV, same spot you pulled off. They saw a girl begging for a ride. He stopped. She climbed in. I was watching from across the fence. I heard them screaming about her eyes, The guy slowed, lights off, tried to speak to her. She dissolved through the seat, her voice echoing back, "Go home." The car died. They sat for 10 minutes before engine sputtered back. He finished the coffee, then gave me the lighter and leaned forward. And that's what they told me the next day. Several additional testimonies followed, from drivers on the corridor, from drunk teens who'd wandered graveyard at night, from the caretaker's daughter who said she once saw a transparent woman kneeling at a grave, her hand inches from the stone before she vanished. One couple, on their honeymoon road trip, even reported stopping to use the restroom near the cemetery. They said they returned feeling disoriented. 3 hours had passed without explanation. No cell signal. No missed calls. No explanation but lost time. When they drove away, they thought they'd only been there for 10 minutes. I spent the next days digging deeper. Reports, newspaper clippings, local folklore, and sharing tips with other MSG Midwestern Supernatural Group researchers. What I learned: no satanic panic. The rumors of cult rituals in Stull came from tabloid headlines in the 1980s and have since been debunked. No evidence of mass graves or ritual paraphernalia exists on site. But the story endured because the idea of hidden evil in quiet towns plays to primal fears. Cemetery records. I traced burial logs back to the 1860s. Faces on headstones faded by time. No singular tragic event emerged, just decades of small-town deaths. Typhoid, influenza, farming accidents. But many graves are unmarked. In folklore, it's always those forgotten souls who haunt. Military graves, a few Civil War-era veterans are buried there. Some sources speculate that fallen soldiers displaced from battlefields linger. Either way, the energy feels older than a century. The place doesn't feel like it's just haunted. It feels like it's watched from another world. Geological weirdness. A local geologist told me the land is a sinkhole, a limestone depression that traps water. Moisture and methane could cause lights or eerie mists. But no chemical explanation accounts for footsteps behind you when you're standing alone. Patterns. Most encounters happen between 1 to 4 a.m., the witching hour. Most occur in late spring and fall, when night is long and fields emit moisture. Almost everyone cites the roadside, not the cemetery, as the focal point where the hitchhiker appears. An investigation of my own. I returned to Stull alone with camera, recorder, thermometer, EMF meter, and Geiger counter, though radiation anomalies are unlikely. It was a crisp April night, cicadas long silenced, crickets quiet in the grass. At 1:47 a.m., I parked in the gravel turnout. Car off. Phone on airplane. Temperature plummeted, breath clouded. I walked east along the shoulder of Route 66, old asphalt, faded lines chipped away. Then the headlights swung up. A black sedan pulled off into my spot and idled. I froze, heart skyrocketing. The driver's window fell halfway. A figure emerged, pale face framed by damp dark hair, wearing clothes that looked like they'd been soaking wet. "Can I began, voice shaky. The car lunged forward and disappeared. The engine died before the cemetery drive. I sprinted there, no trace. No skid marks. No whirlwind. Just silence and empty road. Back in my car, I played my recorder. On the ambient track, nothing but distant insects. On the EMF, spikes. Temperature dropped 2 degrees in seconds. I felt eyes in the back seat. I looked empty. Voices from the past. I played a disguised snippet of my recording for an older woman in Lawrence. someone who grew up near Stull. She recognized the location immediately. She said she remembered her grandmother warning her never to walk near the cemetery after sunset. There were stories. A young mother buried there in 1892 whose baby died at childbirth, whose spirit was said to walk the roadside clutching a child's blanket, asking for a ride. I didn't track down any record of such a grave, but the story reinforced a theme. Stull taps into memory of forgotten grief, lost souls, unexpected arrivals, departures that never happen. My blood runs cold thinking about what happened next. It was midnight, fog rolling down from the nearby hills. I sat in the cemetery driveway, headlights off, waiting. My camera tripod in the passenger seat. EMF meter clipped to gear belt. Recorder on dash. I dialed the tape prompt. If you're here, show yourself. Static. When? Nothing. Then click. A door. I glanced, and there in my rearview mirror, a faint shape at the road's edge, long coat, hood up, hunched over. No reflective headlights on face, just dark emptiness. I stepped out, camera raised, stepped into the fog. No crunch of gravel. No twigs snapping. But I smelled damp soil, decaying leaves. I edged forward and felt a sudden tug at my coat sleeve. Behind me, I spun. Camera flashed. No one. No footprints. Just the fog. EMF spiked on the meter, registering unstable waves. My recorder picked up a whisper. Why? Why do you come? I stumbled back. I didn't run, couldn't. Frozen. Then silence. The sleeve tug vanished. I backed slowly to my car, heart pounding. It took me 15 minutes to start the engine. The aftermath. The footage is fragmented, out-of-focus shapes, fog-thick frames, EMF meter flickers, and 2 seconds of static shot of my sleeve, and nothing more. I showed it to Michael. He watched with clenched jaw. That's it, he said. That's the proof. He said the hitchhiker, or caretaking spirit, doesn't want to be seen. It just wants you to acknowledge her presence. She tests you. You whisper her name, ask her why, and she responds, why? And sometimes leave. That's her message. She wants to be seen, noticed, but when pressed, love becomes rejection. You, the viewer, are no longer watching someone else's story. You're in the seat beside me. Headlights off on Route 66. A cold finger across your spine. Because the question is no longer, do you believe? This is not entertainment. It's happening. If you're ever on Route 66, near Stull Cemetery, listen at 2 a.m. for footsteps. Watch the roadside shoulders for a pale hand raised in a silent plea. But no matter how kind your heart, do not stop. Drive fast. Drive away. Because some souls don't want to go home. I didn't sleep well after that night on Route 66. Every time my eyes closed, I saw her. Wet hair plastered to a pale face, eyes like unlit wells, mouth moving silently as though repeating the same word over and over. My dreams smelled of damp earth and rust. When morning came, the voice from my recorder still whispered in my ears. Why? Why do you come? I'd already decided I wasn't done. Not even close. Old paper, older secrets. The first step was research. If Stull Cemetery had no official ghost, no documented tragedy, then something was being hidden in plain sight. That meant digging, literally and figuratively. I started in the Douglas County Historical Society archives, a squat brick building that smelled faintly of mold and dust. The volunteers were polite but nervous when I mentioned Stull. One woman, thin, white hair tucked into a bun, leaned in and whispered, You won't find the truth in the papers. That place has been cleaned. But she brought me 3 boxes of brittle ledgers, handwritten burial logs from the 1800s, folded maps, and photocopied obituaries from a time when death was printed alongside grocery store sales. Most entries were ordinary: farmers dying of accidents, children taken by fever, soldiers returned from war only to be buried weeks later. But there were anomalies. On April 9, 1892, an entry read, "Unnamed female, found along roadway in wet garments, age estimated between 20 to 25. No family claimed. Interred without ceremony. No grave number. No stone. Just a line in ink and a final erasure." The woman's cause of death wasn't listed. The place of discovery was north approach to Stull Cemetery. It matched the description given by the 1970s couple from Part 1. Locals who remember. Armed with this record, I sought out older residents. Most refused to speak. One man in overalls, repairing a fence, stopped hammering when I mentioned the year 1892. "My great-granddad told me about her," he said. "Said she was trouble, came out of nowhere walking barefoot, whisperin' at wagons passin' through. They found her face down in the ditch after a thunderstorm. He swore he saw her after that, walking the same road, clothes drippin', though the sky was clear. I asked if she had a name. He shook his head. No name. No grave. Just the ditch." That phrase stayed with me. Night return. 3 nights later I returned. I'd marked the spot where the north approach would have been in 1892. The terrain had shifted. Part of the original road was overgrown and curved differently from modern Route 66. The grass was waist-high. I parked my car a good 50 yards away and walked in darkness, only the moon for light. The EMF meter was silent, temperature steady. At 2:11 a.m. the silence broke. Not with footsteps, this time with humming. Low, tuneless, like someone remembering a lullaby they hadn't sung in years. It drifted from the ditch. I froze. My recorder picked it up clearly. It lasted 20 seconds, then stopped abruptly. When I looked toward the ditch, the grass there was moving, not swaying with the breeze, but shifting aside as if something unseen was walking through it. I backed away slowly, not taking my eyes off that movement. My heart hammered so hard my ribs hurt. The air was thick, wet, heavy, and my breath condensed even though it wasn't cold. And then she rose. Not fast, not violent, just emerged. Head first, then shoulders, like someone walking up invisible steps from the earth. Her hair clung to her cheeks. Her eyes reflected nothing. She didn't look at me. She just turned toward the cemetery gates and started walking, following the dead. Logic told me to get in the car and leave. Curiosity and something deeper, maybe the same pull that had kept this legend alive for 130 years, told me to follow. She moved slowly and I kept my distance. Each time she passed between headstones, my EMF meter spiked and my vision wavered at the edges, as if the world around us was going out of focus. At one point she stopped, turned slightly, not fully toward me, and whispered something I couldn't catch. My recorder caught it. Later I played it back. It was the same word repeated 3 times. Gate. 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 I looked toward where she was facing and for the first time noticed it. An old wrought iron gate half buried in the earth at the far end of the cemetery. No path led to it. No hinges. Just 2 rusted posts and the arch between them. She approached it, reached out, and was gone. Not faded. Not walked away. 1 second there, the next, gone. The EMF meter went dead silent. My breath came in gasps. The hollow gate. The next day I returned in daylight. The gate was still there, corroded, leaning, embedded in the ground as if it had grown there. The metal was cold, colder than the air, and when I touched it, I swore I heard faint rushing water like a river underground. The cemetery caretaker said it had been there forever, and no one knew who built it. Kids mess with it, but, he paused, eyes narrowing. I wouldn't touch it after dark. I asked why. Things come through, he said simply. Then he walked away. That night, I positioned my car so the gate was visible in my headlights. Midnight passed. 1 a.m. passed. At 1:53 a.m., a figure appeared by the roadside. Same wet clothes, same dark hair. But this time she wasn't hitchhiking. She was facing the cemetery, staring straight at the hollow gate. I swear she turned her head toward me and smiled. It wasn't warm. It was the kind of smile a drowning person gives when they know you're going to drown with them. She lifted her hand, pointed at the gate, and then every electronic device in my car shut off at once. Lights, engine, recorder, dead. Only the gate remained, faintly glowing in my headlights after image burned into my vision. And from the darkness came the voice, louder than before. Come through. They say every investigation has a moment when you realize you've gone too far. That the question you've been asking isn't, is this real? Anymore, it's, will I make it back? For me, that moment was standing at the hollow gate with no working car, no phone signal, and a voice whispering come through in a tone that wasn't asking. I told myself I wouldn't come back. I told myself the footage I'd already captured was enough for dark horror bites. That I had a duty to my viewers not to vanish chasing a century-old ghost. But the voice followed me home. Not in dreams, not even in hallucinations. In the silence between moments. When the refrigerator stopped humming. When traffic outside my apartment went still. When I showered and the water hissed just a little too loud. Every gap in the noise was filled with her breath. Her whisper. Come through. I knew the only way to end it was to see what lay beyond the hollow gate. Approach to the gate. May 17th, 1:38 a.m. I parked half a mile away and walked in darkness. No flashlight. No camera lights. Only the EMF meter and my recorder. The cemetery was silent. No wind. No crickets. The headstones seemed taller in the dark, leaning like eavesdropping strangers. The hollow gate was just as I'd left it, leaning, rusted, cold. But tonight, the air shimmered around it, like heat rising from asphalt. The EMF meter screamed into the red. My recorder picked up a low-frequency hum, too deep for me to hear in person but strong enough to shake the waveform. And then she appeared. She was standing inside the cemetery fence this time, just to the left of the gate. Clothes dripping, bare feet pressed into the damp earth. Her hair shifted even though there was no wind. She didn't hitchhike. She didn't smile. She beckoned. One hand lifted, fingers curling toward herself, slow and deliberate. Every instinct screamed to run, but my legs moved forward. My vision tunneled, edges of the world going black. The only clear thing was her face. Up close, she wasn't young. She wasn't old either. Her skin was smooth but stretched too tightly, as if something inside was pushing outward. Her eyes weren't empty anymore. They were full of moving shapes, like shadows swimming in deep water. She stepped backward into the gate's shadow. The moment I stepped under the hollow gate, the air changed. It was cold, not natural cold, but the kind that sinks straight into your bones. My breath crystallized. The ground felt wrong. softer than dirt, heavier than stone. The cemetery was gone. Or maybe still there, but not that cemetery. I stood in a mirror image of Stull, same headstones, same layout, but every stone was cracked, every tree leafless, the sky above churning with slow black clouds. In the distance, figures stood in clusters, motionless, watching. The hitchhiker was gone. I heard whispers, dozens at once, too quiet to understand. The ground pulsed faintly beneath my feet, like a heartbeat. And then they started moving toward me. The figures. They weren't walking, they were drifting. Faces blurred, clothes ancient and tattered. Some had no faces at all, just smooth skin where features should be. They formed a loose circle around me. I tried to step back, but the hollow gate wasn't behind me anymore. One figure came forward, a man in a Civil War uniform, eyes sunk deep. His mouth moved and my recorder caught the words. She opened it. You must close it. I asked how. My voice cracked. He lifted one trembling hand and pointed toward a mound of earth in the center of the cemetery. The grave without a stone. The mound was small, child-sized. No marker. No flowers. Just soil that looked freshly turned, though I knew no one buried here in over a century. Kneeling beside it, I saw something glinting in the dirt, a rusted iron key cold to the touch. The whispers swelled. The figures were closer now, hands outstretched. I didn't know what to do, but I knew if I didn't move, I'd never leave. So I pressed the key into the ground. The collapse. The world convulsed. The sky split with a sound like tearing metal. The figures froze, then were sucked backward into the darkness between the headstones. The hitchhiker appeared one last time, right in front of me. Her face was calm, almost relieved. She mouthed one word, thanks. And then, nothing. Back to the road. I woke up on the roadside shoulder, headlights of a passing truck sweeping over me. My car was parked 50 feet away, engine running. My recorder was still in my hand. On it was 3 minutes of static, then my own voice saying, close it. I drove away without looking back. Final note. I haven't returned to Stull. I don't plan to. But sometimes, late at night, I pass an empty stretch of Route 66 and see a pale figure in the rearview mirror. She doesn't hitchhike anymore. She just watches. And I know if I ever stop, the hollow gate will be waiting. Legends don't live this long unless they want to be remembered. Stull Cemetery, the hollow gate, the hitchhiker who never goes home. Call it folklore, call it fear, call it coincidence. But remember this, I went there. I saw her. And I crossed the threshold. Some doors aren't meant to be opened. I only hope I truly closed it. Because if I didn't, she's still out there waiting on Route 66 for the next car that slows down. So, if you're driving past Stull late at night and you see a pale figure by the roadside, don't stop. Drive.